Thoughts on the Gita. During his sojourn in Calcutta in 1897, Swami Vivekananda used to stay for the most part at the Mutt, the headquarters of the Ramakrishna Mission, located then at Alam Bazar. During this time, several young men who had been preparing themselves for some time previously gathered round him and took the vows of brahmacharya and sannyasa, and Swamiji began to train them for future work by holding classes on the Gita and Vedanta and initiating them into the practices of meditation. In one of these classes, he talked eloquently in Bengali on the Gita. The following is the translation of the summary of the discourse as it was entered in the Mutt diary. The book known as the Gita forms a part of the Mahabharata. To understand the Gita properly, several things are very important to know. First, whether it formed a part of the Mahabharata, that is, whether the authorship attributed to Vedavyasa was true, or if it was merely interpolated within the great epic. Secondly, whether there was any historical personality of the name of Krishna. Thirdly, whether the great war of Kurukshetra, as mentioned in the Gita, actually took place. And fourthly, whether Arjuna and others were real historical persons. Now, in the first place, let us see what grounds there are for such inquiry. We know that there were many who went by the name of Vedavyasa, and among them who was the real author of the Gita, the Badarayana Vyasa or Dvaipayana Vyasa. Vyasa was only a title. Anyone who composed a new Purana was known by the name of Vyasa, like the word Vikramaditya, which was also a general name. Another point is the book Gita had not been much known to the generality of people before Shankaracharya made it famous by writing his great commentary on it. Long before that, there was current, according to many, the commentary on it by Bodhayana. If this could be proved, it would go a long way, no doubt, to establish the antiquity of the Gita and the authorship of Vyasa. But the Bodhayana Bhashya on the Vedanta Sutras, from which Ramanuja compiled his Sri Bhashya, which Shankaracharya mentions and even quotes in part here and there in his own commentary, and which was so greatly discussed by the Swami Dayananda, not a copy even of that Bodhayana Bhashya could I find while traveling throughout India. It is said that even Ramanuja compiled his Bhashya from a worm eaten manuscript which he happened to find. When even this great Bodhayana Bhashya on the Vedanta Sutras is so much enshrouded in the darkness of uncertainty, it is simply useless to try to establish the existence of the Bodhayana Bhashya on the Gita. Some infer that Shankaracharya was the author of the Gita, and that it was he who foisted it into the body of the Mahabharata. Then, as to the second point in question, much doubt exists about the personality of Krishna. In one place in the Chandogya Upanishad, we find mention of Krishna, the son of Devaki, who received spiritual instructions from one Ghora, a yogi. In the Mahabharata, Krishna is the king of Dwarka, and in the Vishnu Purana, we find a description of Krishna playing with the gopis. Again, in the Bhagavata, the account of his Rasa Leela is detailed at length. In very ancient times in our country, there was in vogue an Utsava called Madanotsava, celebration in honor of Cupid. That very thing was transformed into Dola and thrust upon the shoulders of Krishna. Who can be so bold as to assert that the Rasa Leela and other things connected with him were not similarly fastened upon him? In ancient times, there was very little tendency in our country to find out truths by historical research. So anyone could say what he thought best without substantiating it with proper facts and evidence. Another thing, in those ancient times there was very little hankering after name and fame in men. So it often happened that one man composed a book and made it pass current in the name of his guru or of someone else. In such cases, it is very hazardous for the investigator of historical facts to get at the truth. In ancient times, they had no knowledge whatever of geography. Imagination ran riot. And so we meet with such fantastic creations of the brain as sweet ocean, milk ocean, clarified butter ocean, curd ocean, etc. In the Puranas, we find one living 10,000 years, another 100,000 years. But the Vedas say, Shatayurvai Purushaha, man lives 100 years. Whom shall we follow here? So, to reach a correct conclusion in the case of Krishna is well nigh impossible. It is human nature to build round the real character of a great man all sorts of imaginary superhuman attributes. As regards Krishna, the same must have happened, but it seems quite probable that he was a king. Quite probable, I say, because in ancient times in our country it was chiefly the kings who exerted themselves most in the preaching of Brahmanyana. Another point to be specially noted here is that whoever might have been the author of the Gita, we find its teachings the same as those in the whole of the Mahabharata. From this, we can safely infer that in the age of the Mahabharata, some great man arose and preached the Brahmanyana in this new garb to the then existing society. Another fact comes to the fore that in the olden days, as one sect after another arose, there also came into existence and use among them one new scripture or another. It happened too that in the lapse of time both the sect and its scripture died out, or the sect ceased to exist but its scripture remained. Similarly, it was quite probable that the Gita was the scripture of such a sect which had embodied its high and noble ideas in this sacred book. Now to the third point, bearing on the subject of the Kurukshetra war. No special evidence in support of it can be adduced, but there is no doubt that there was a war fought between the Kurus and the Panchalas. Another thing, how could there be so much discussion about jnana, bhakti, and yoga on the battlefield, where the huge army stood in battle array ready to fight, just waiting for the last signal? And was any shorthand writer present there to note down every word spoken between Krishna and Arjuna in the din and turmoil of the battlefield? According to some, this Kurukshetra war is only an allegory. When we sum up its esoteric significance, it means the war which is constantly going on within man between the tendencies of good and evil. This meaning too may not be irrational. About the fourth point, there is enough ground of doubt as regards the historicity of Arjuna and others, and it is this: Shatapatha Brahmana is a very ancient book. In it are mentioned somewhere all the names of those who were the performers of the Ashwamedha Yajna. But in those places there is not only no mention, but no hint even of the names of Arjuna and others, though it speaks of Janmejaya, the son of Parikshit, who was a grandson of Arjuna. Yet in the Mahabharata and other books it is stated that Yudhishthira, Arjuna, and others celebrated the Ashwamedha sacrifice. One thing should be especially remembered here, that there is no connection between these historical researches and our real aim, which is the knowledge that leads to the acquirement of dharma. Even if the historicity of the whole thing is proved to be absolutely false today, it will not in the least be any loss to us. Then what is the use of so much historical research, you may ask? It has its use, because we have to get at the truth. It will not do for us to remain bound by wrong ideas born of ignorance. In this country, people think very little of the importance of such inquiries. Many of the sects believe that in order to preach a good thing, which may be beneficial to many, there is no harm in telling an untruth, if that helps such preaching, or in other words, the end justifies the means. Hence, we find many of our tantras beginning with Mahadeva said to Parvati. But our duty should be to convince ourselves of the truth, to believe in truth only. Such is the power of superstition, or faith in old traditions without inquiry into its truth, that it keeps men bound hand and foot, so much so that even Jesus the Christ, Mohammed, and other great men believed in many such superstitions and could not shake them off. You have to keep your eye always fixed on truth only and shun all superstitions completely. Now it is for us to see what there is in the Gita. If we study the Upanishads, we notice, in wandering through the mazes of many irrelevant subjects, the sudden introduction of the discussion of a great truth. Just as in the midst of a huge wilderness, a traveler unexpectedly comes across here and there an exquisitely beautiful rose, with its leaves, thorns, roots all entangled. Compared with that, the Gita is like these truths beautifully arranged together in their proper places. like a fine garland or a bouquet of the choicest flowers. The Upanishads deal elaborately with Shraddha in many places, but hardly mention Bhakti. In the Gita, on the other hand, the subject of Bhakti is not only again and again dealt with, but in it, the innate spirit of Bhakti has attained its culmination. Now, let us see some of the main points discussed in the Gita. Wherein lies the originality of the Gita, which distinguishes it from all preceding scriptures? It is this: though before its advent, yoga, jnana, bhakti, etc., had each its strong adherents, they all quarreled among themselves, each claiming superiority for his own chosen path. No one ever tried to seek for reconciliation among these different paths. It was the author of the Gita who, for the first time, tried to harmonize these. He took the best from what all the sects then existing had to offer and threaded them in the Gita. But even where Krishna failed to show a complete reconciliation, Samanvaya, among these warring sects, it was fully accomplished by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in this 19th century. The next is Nishkama Karma, or work without desire or attachment. People nowadays understand what is meant by this in various ways. Some say what is implied by being unattached is to become purposeless. If that were its real meaning, then heartless brutes and the worlds would be the best exponents of the performance of Nishkama Karma. Many others again give the example of Janaka and wish themselves to be equally recognized as past masters in the practice of Nishkama Karma. Janaka, literally father, did not acquire that distinction by bringing forth children, but these people all want to be Janakas, with the sole qualification of being the fathers of a brood of children. No, the true Nishkama Karmi, performer of work without desire, is neither to be like a brute, nor to be inert, nor heartless. He is not tamasika, but of pure sattva. His heart is so full of love and sympathy that he can embrace the whole world with his love. The world at large cannot generally comprehend his all embracing love and sympathy. The reconciliation of the different parts of dharma and work without desire or attachment. These are the two special characteristics of the Gita. Let us now read a little from the second chapter. Sanjaya Uvacha Tan tatha kripaya vishtam ashrupurna kulekshanam Vishidantamidam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha Shri Bhagavan Kutastva kashmalamidam vishame samupasthitam Anaryajushtamaswargyam akirtikaram arjuna Klaibyam masma gamah partha naitatvayyupapadyate Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktvottishta parantapa. Sanjaya said, to him who was thus overwhelmed with pity and sorrowing, and whose eyes were dimmed with tears, Madhusudana spoke these words. The blessed Lord said, in such a strait, whence comes upon thee, O Arjuna, this dejection, un-Aryan like, disgraceful, and contrary to the attainment of heaven? Yield not to unmanliness, O son of Pritha, ill doth it become thee. Cast off this main faint heartedness and arise, O scorcher of thine enemies. In the shlokas beginning with Tan tatha kripaya vishtam, how poetically, how beautifully has Arjuna's real position been painted. Then Sri Krishna advises Arjuna, and in the words Klaibyam masma gamaf partha, etc., why is he goading Arjuna to fight? Because it was not that the disinclination of Arjuna to fight arose out of the overwhelming predominance of pure sattvaguna. It was all tamas that brought on this unwillingness. The nature of a man of sattvaguna is that he is equally calm in all situations in life, whether it be prosperity or adversity. But Arjuna was afraid. He was overwhelmed with pity. That he had the instinct and the inclination to fight is proved by the simple fact that he came to the battlefield with no other purpose than that. Frequently in our lives also, such things are seen to happen. Many people think they are sattvika by nature, but they are really nothing but tamasika. Many living in an uncleanly way regard themselves as paramahamsas. Why? Because the Shastras say that paramahamsas live like one inert or mad or like an unclean spirit. Paramahamsas are compared to children, but here it should be understood that the comparison is one sided. The Paramahamsa and the child are not one and non different. They only appear similar, being the two extreme poles, as it were. One has reached to a state beyond jnana, and the other has not got even an inkling of jnana. The quickest and gentlest vibrations of light are both beyond the reach of our ordinary vision, but in the one it is intense heat, and in the other it may be said to be almost without any heat. So it is with the opposite qualities of sattva and tamas. They seem in some respects to be the same, no doubt, but there is a world of difference between them. The tamoguna loves very much to array itself in the garb of the sattva. Here in Arjuna, the mighty warrior, it has come under the guise of daya, pity. In order to remove this delusion which had overtaken Arjuna, what did the Bhagwan say? As I always preach that you should not decry a man by calling him a sinner, but that you should draw his attention to the omnipotent power that is in him, in the same way does the Bhagwan speak to Arjuna. Naitat tvayu. It doth not befit thee. Thou art Atman imperishable, beyond all evil. Having forgotten thy real nature, thou hast, by thinking thyself a sinner, as one afflicted with bodily evils and mental grief, thou hast made thyself so. This doth not befit thee. So says the Bhagwan. Klaibyam masma gamaf partha. Yield not to unmanliness, O son of Pritha. There is in the world neither sin nor misery, neither disease nor grief. If there is anything in the world which can be called sin, it is this fear. Know that any work which brings out the latent power in thee is punya, virtue, and that which makes thy body and mind weak is verily sin. Shake off this weakness, this faint heartedness. Klaibyam masma gamaf partha. Thou art a hero, a vira. This is unbecoming of thee. If you, my sons, can proclaim this message to the world, Klaibyam masma gamaf partha naitatvayu. Then all this disease, grief, sin, and sorrow will vanish from off the face of the earth in 3 days. All these ideas of weakness will be nowhere. Now it is everywhere, this current of the vibration of fear. Reverse the current, bring in the opposite vibration, and behold the magic transformation. Thou art omnipotent. Go to the mouth of the cannon, fear not. Hate not the most abject sinner, look not to his exterior. Turn thy gaze inward, where resides the Paramatman. Proclaim to the whole world with trumpet voice, there is no sin in thee, there is no misery in thee. Thou art the reservoir of omnipotent power. Arise, awake, and manifest the divinity within. If one reads this one shloka, Klaibyam masma gamaf partha naitatvayu papadyate kshudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktvottishta parantapa. One gets all the merits of reading the entire Gita, for in this one shloka lies embedded the whole message of the Gita.